Defending your family's health and well-being against a sadistic man who's out for blood is not something most of us will ever have to do. And if something like that did happen, would we be facing down someone like Robert Mitchum? I'm going to guess not, but strange things happen in life, so maybe it's wise for all of us to have a bug-out bag and be ready to jump on our houseboat. Just float away from that maniac. And while a change of underwear and some non-perishable foodstuffs would be necessities in your bug-out bag, a container of coffee beans would be necessary too. Cape Fear is set in the deep south, but even they can order from our sponsor, no different than Bev and I can here in the east end of Toronto. And that sponsor is Sparkplug Coffee. Sparkplug has the freshest, fairly traded, premium Arabica beans in Canada. You can get half calf or decaf just as easily as you can get the little guys that are jammed with caffeine. You can also order from a menu that offers you many blends and roasts. Seasonal blends rotate on Sparkplug's menu too, so get away from fall and winter blends and look for something that suits the spring. If you're an American or a Canadian, you'll get your orders sent within a week, and Canadians can enjoy free shipping. But all of this would be even better if you signed up to be a member in their Autopilot Coffee Club. You get deals, you'll get perks, and you'll save money on every order. You can pause or you can cancel anytime, and you can also customize to get your orders when you need them. This, my friends, is not a constrictive Coffee of the Month club. Every business has a website these days, and theirs is sparkplug.coffee. Make it sparkplug.coffee/HYES, and then you'll save 20% off your next order. You got to use our HYES promo code. You just gotta. Well, kids, it's time to have the last full-on chat that Bev and I will have on this channel for quite a few weeks. Let's make it a good one. Bev, say those 2 words.
And action! Have you ever seen
Cape Fear? Hello, friends and neighbors, and thank you for downloading or streaming the 585th Battle of Wills on this channel that's known as Have You Ever Seen? Every Monday we stroll into cinema's past and do a spoiler-drenched review of a classic film. Drench 'em. Spoilers. I'm the smooth criminal who smokes cigars and occasionally smears a raw egg in a lovely lady's chest in an unsettling way, Ryan Ellis. And here's the counselor who makes a good enough salary to allow for her family to own a cottage and a houseboat in another state. My wife, Bev.
That's me. And I have to ask, is there a settling way to rub a raw egg on a woman's chest?
Probably not. It could be erotic in some other movie, but not in this one. That was a pretty great scene in a creepy way. Okay, the coming attractions trivia question for Cape Fear. Gregory Peck wasn't known to star in a lot of lurid thrillers or action films, but he did sometimes make movies like that, case in point. And he does have 3 motion pictures that are ranked on the AFI, so American Film Institute's Top 100 Thrills. Cape Fear is one of them. What are the other 2?
They are The Omen and The Guns of Navarone.
We covered The Omen, of course. Cape Fear was 61st, The Omen was 81st, and The Guns of Navarone was 89th. Peck was a surprising choice to do a horror movie when he made The Omen at age 60, but I believe that was his biggest hit ever, at least with him in a starring role. The Guns of Navarone was huge too, so it's clear that Greg Peck should have made more horror flicks and war films. Made a lot more money. He did pretty well in his career, but he could have made even more. Okay, The Crafty Rapist was released by Universal Pictures in mid-June 1962. It wasn't a dynamo at the box office, but the flick sure was influential. Martin Scorsese remade it in 1991, and Marty's version went on to absolutely rake in the dollars. Plus, one of the most famous Simpsons episodes has Sideshow Bob stalking Bart and the family, and eventually singing a show tune with Bart. The HMS Pinafore. But anyway, Bev, the movie's over 60 years old, so please remind everybody what it's about. Give them the skinny on Cape Fear.
Gregory Peck is Sam Bowden, a lawyer and straight-and-narrow family man. Robert Mitchum is Max Cady, the rapist Sam helped put away 8 years ago. Max is out on parole and out to ruin Sam's life by stalking and terrorizing him, his wife, and their teenage daughter. Sam tries to get help from his friends at the police department, but Max knows exactly how to keep his behavior just legal enough to tie their hands. He even goes so far as to file a claim of harassment for their failed attempts to get him to leave the Bowdens alone. Feeling trapped and helpless, Sam hatches a plan to lure Max to a secluded swamp where he'd be able to legally kill him for trespassing. Max falls for the scheme but catches on early enough to get the upper hand. The 2 men fight, and when Sam has him dead to rights, he changes his mind and lets him live.
Yeah, that's a mistake at the end.
It sure is.
Or, in a nutshell, Gregory Peck plays a Southern lawyer in a movie released in 1962 in which a vicious bastard attacks his daughter, and a key character is played by an actor named Robert. This isn't To Kill a Mockingbird, it's Cape Fear, because that was the same year as this. That's not really much of a nutshell, I guess, but that it's
pretty neat,
many
though.
ways similar. That's a far more classy movie, but he's a lawyer in both of them, and his daughter's menaced, and yeah, there's danger even in that film. And, of course, Robert Duvall scares the living crap out of people at the end, especially you. Jesus, is what you said when he's behind the door at the end.
And they're like, we love you, Boo Rat. Like, really? Because he was scraping behind the door.
We watched The Conjuring last year and got you screaming plenty of times in that one. That might have been a more horrifying moment in a non-horror movie than The Conjuring.
It had been so many years since I'd read the book, and I had no idea where it was going.
There's that great scene with the two daughters. Well, they're all daughters, but the two girls that share the room are talking about, there's something behind the door.
It's Bradley.
Should have been cut to Robert Duvall in 1962. Would have been scarier than anything else I could have shown. Okay, then, Cape Fear, the numbers. Rotten Tomatoes are pretty strong. 92% of critics like the film. 7.9 out of 10 is the average. There are only 25 reviews on the site, though, just 2.5. And 86% of audiences. Marty's version, the Scorsese one, are at 75% and 77%, so pretty strong fresh tomatoes there, too. Solid, anyway. I can't ascertain where this one ranked at the 1962 U.S. box office, but Lawrence of Arabia was number 2, and To Kill a Mockingbird, with Gregory Peck, was number 6. This was nominated for no Oscars, no awards nominations of any kind, in fact, so no National Film Registry, none of that. I looked and thought, where's that? There's always a spot for that, almost every movie we've ever covered, but not this one. Although the 1991 one got nominations for De Niro as Best Actor and Juliette Lewis for Best Supporting Actress. The 1962 one, the one we're talking about mostly today, was 61st, as we said, in the AFI's Top 100 Thrills. Psycho is number 1, with a score by Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah.
And he does the great score on this one. It was the most famous musical themes in Cape Fear, and of course that was also in the 1991 version. Cape Fear, 28th on the top 50 villains. So that, of course, is Max Cady. Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs is number 1. And Mitchum's Harry Powell from The Night of the Hunter, which we covered last year, was 29th. So he was ranked right behind Max Cady on that list of his back-to-back Mitchums. All right then, Bev, we saw this movie, I think, well over a week ago. Not the most fresh in our mind movie, but a very good thriller, and you'd never seen it before. You've seen the remake. What'd you think of Cape Fear 1962?
I loved it. It is such an effective thriller. It's a huge shame that it pulls its punches right at the end there, because otherwise it's gutsy, it's edgy by the standards of the 60s. Max sets this perfect, sinister trap for Sam, and the way the tension builds, it's unbearable. It's so effective. And the stakes feel so crazy high. It's fair to say it's a little heavy-handed. They spare nothing to drive the point home that this man is dangerous to women. And the politics of the story are inconsistent, at least. But when a thriller is this taut and well cast, why do you want to ruin it by overthinking it?
Mom said it was psychologically taught. If I can quote adaptation, I will quote adaptation. Mom said it was psychologically taught. Yeah, Mitchum was a great choice for the bad guy. And part of what works in this is that I don't think he played bad guys a lot necessarily. Night of the Hunter, of course, he did 7 years before. Look at the size of him. He's a brawny-looking guy. You can believe him beating the crap out of somebody. And maybe he's more effective even than De Niro was in the remake, although De Niro was great. Has to be somebody who seems to be getting off on the idea of not only hurting people, but raping them, and doesn't usually kill them. But he does seem to be saying, I think he is saying to Sam, I'm going to rape and kill both your wife and your daughter.
He's a true sadist.
And it's bad enough you want to hurt anybody, but to do those two things. But like you said in the description, the plot description, he doesn't really ever cross the line. In fact, to the outside observer, Sam would seem like the irrational one. What's he done? And even Mark Dutton, the Martin Balsam character, the police chief, is saying he hasn't crossed any boundary.
He kills their dog. That is...
There's no proof.
No, but there's no proof. So he crosses the line, but he does it in such a way that they simply can't prove it. And he's smart enough, I think, the point where he hires a lawyer to charge them with harassment. And it does tie their hands. Now, I don't really believe that any police department would actually be like, well, what are we supposed to do? Especially because they're friends with the Bowden family. They would just run him out of town. They could care less what his lawyer says. He's a convicted rapist. Cops get away with that stuff all the time. But for the purpose of this movie, the law is the law. And if you can't prove that he poisoned their dog, he can stand on the edge of your property. He can hover around you. He can talk to your daughter. That's not illegal. It's just ominous. But how many cases do we hear about all the time, still now in the 2020s, stalkers get away with it because cops' hands are tied until they actually commit a crime. And I think they say in the movie,
they do.
What am I supposed to do? I have to wait for him to actually hurt me before I can do something?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah. This is why you get in a free society. Unfortunately, people have to have the right, it sounds terrible to say it, but to commit crimes.
But what makes this movie cool is that Sam starts the film as this person who really has a lot of faith in the law. He's a lawyer and he believes in the system. So when the law lets him down and his options run out, even though the film is made in a way that makes the answer super obvious, it's still a difficult conclusion for someone like him to come to, that he has to compromise his morals. There's actually an interesting difference between this and the book. In the book, apparently his wife was the tough one who was like, let's kill him!
Really?
He was the one that needed convincing, whereas here she's the voice of reason who's like, no, you can't do that.
The book was The Executioners, 1957, I think. Let's see who wrote that. 57 by John MacDonald.
When I say earlier that the movie's politics are a little confusing, the cops are saying, we can't do anything. But when he tells his cop buddy, maybe I lure him onto my property and then kill him for crossing the line. And they're like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, knock yourself out. As a matter of fact, we'll give you a man to help you do this. They're ready to ambush this guy, but they just have to wait for the law to be on their side in this roundabout way that ethically... No, it doesn't work like that. But then I guess ethically, somebody has to stop this guy. He's the sick man who just wants to hurt people.
Isn't it Mark also that suggests the three guys to beat him up? Which is done fine in this movie. It's under the pier, and you can tell that, oh my God, Mitchum's getting the best of them. And then he calls, and it's Peggy who answers, and he's a little beat up, but he calls to say, oh, I'm okay after all. I know what's going on there, in a subtle way. But in the remake... it's a longer scene. It's not under a pier. It's in a bar parking lot or something like that. He beats the three guys. I think it's more vicious and more brutal because it's 1991. And Sam is watching. I don't think he's supposed to be watching this version, but he's definitely watching. So Nick Nolte is watching De Niro beat his three hired assassins. Or not assassins, but thugs.
Thugs, yeah.
And the line is, come out, wherever you are, because he knows that Sam is there. Marty's version is so much more morally dubious. In that one... Sam had an affair with the woman that gets assaulted and raped, Ileana Douglas.
And doesn't he do something to ensure that Max will get convicted? I think he breaks the law.
That version is pretty loyal to the story, actually, but some of the biggest differences are in the morals of it. So they have their big fist fight, and we know that Max has gone way over the top, and he does deserve to die now, just like in this movie. It's pretty unequivocal. We know that anyway as an audience member, but if you just were watching this, or even the cops, you'd say, but what has he actually done? The last 15, 20 minutes, okay, now we have a lot of reasons to want him to die. So in that version, De Niro somehow, I forget how, he's handcuffed to part of the boat. It breaks apart, and he's trapped. Nick Nolte grabs a big rock. I'm gonna kill you! He comes over, and a wave washes over, and it takes De Niro away, and he can't even do the thing he said he was going to do right then. De Niro starts speaking in tongues, and he drowns. So he is gone, but the end of that movie seems to be this unending horror. What do we do now? How do we recover from this? Is he really gone? Even though he really is gone. But then this family also was fractured. The marriage wasn't very good, partly because Sam cheated. In this one, he's got him dead to rights. It'd be hard to deny that he should have just shot the guy. He does shoot him, but shoot to kill him. Also, I love the fact that Sam, Greg Peck as well, this classy, deep-voiced man, same year as this does To Kill a Mockingbird, very urbane character, if you will. Not so much, well, he is in this for a while, but he's crawling like a little scurvy spider to get that gun. But then I'm going to let you rot, the thing you want the least. But my question becomes, how do you necessarily prove that he even did all these things? We know that he did as the audience, but how do you prove? He even says when he chokes Kursick to death, or drowns him, I guess, in the water, no fingerprints.
Yeah.
How do you know he did that? Well, we know he did, but it doesn't mean that they could prove it.
How long are they going to put him away? Yeah. So they have to prove that he killed the cop. They have no witnesses, and they have no evidence to prove that. We've seen that this guy is good enough at skirting the law to get away with all kinds of things. All he needs to do is get out on bail. And the Bowden family is dead. Mm-hmm. It's absurd, the idea that he wouldn't just kill him at the end.
I think that's why the last shot is of the family on a boat being taken wherever they're going. And none of them look very happy. There's not a matter of, oh, we survived, we got away from this crazy guy, which is what happens in the remake too, even though he does die, he drowns. But in both versions, and this one maybe even more so, it's a matter of, is this really over? Can he ever really trust that Nancy will be safe? Or Peggy, or himself.
Yeah. In the 91 version, Scorsese uses the story as an opportunity to explore masculinity and how he's impotent to protect his family, whereas the 62 version is implying that, sort of like in the Dirty Harry movies, there's a failure of the government to give law enforcement the freedom to do what they want, and that leaves Sam's family in jeopardy. There's handcuffs on the law, stopping them from protecting good, honest families.
And not that this really should matter that much, but look how much the Bowden family has, and look how much...
Well, Max seems to do fine. Doesn't he have a windfall, and that's why he can get away with this? His mother died or something?
Cady does talk about how much he's lost, though, because his wife divorced him, because he went to jail for rape, and his daughter won't even talk to him. I don't feel sorry for the guy.
I mean, he's the type of guy who would punish his wife by then raping her for a week. And they never say the word rape, by the way. Apparently, the censors wouldn't let them use the word rape, so they just have all these allusions to rape, but you'd have to be pretty dumb not to catch on to what's happening there.
Two people for sure, maybe more. Well, I guess it's three people we know for sure. It's the girl that Sam witnessed him assaulting.
That he goes to prison for.
I think he's raping, but definitely assaulting. Let's say he raped her. I think he did. He's telling Sam he did it to his ex-wife after he got out of prison. So that wasn't that long ago, probably. And then Diane, Barry Chase's character, you're right, they use words that aren't literally rape, but that's what happened to her. It's so brutal in the Marty one. De Niro and Ileana Douglas probably had a hard scene to play because he rips her cheek off, or he bites her cheek off with his teeth. And in this, it's a little bit more subtle what he's doing, but you know he's beating on her. I think it's supposed to suggest that they actually had sex, and maybe in both versions, first, but then, okay, now the real fun for me begins because I'm a lunatic. So yeah, he raped at least 3 people, and he's saying he's going to do it to 2 others, and one of them is a child. Yeah. We've had more rape this month than I would have thought, too. Foxy Brown has one in there, which is handled fairly subtly, but you know that's what happened. We said in Mandy last week that it doesn't happen, but you wonder why the Linus Roach character didn't just do that to Andrea Riseborough's character. I forget their names now, the character name. And the
Mandy. Her name is
Mandy. She's Mandy. Right. She's Mandy. I should have known that one.
And he's Jeremiah.
Jeremiah Sand. Right. So why Jeremiah didn't rape her, I don't really know. I'm glad he didn't. But anyway. And then Revenge of the Nerds, which I covered on Friday, has the, what do they call it, rape by deception. And I talked a lot about that stuff in that. So we've had...
Gone Girl has a false rape charge as well.
That's right, too. Yeah. So it's
two false rape charges.
One of the worst things you can do, and it's a lot of the movies we've covered the last...
Well, it's Revenge Month, so... Yeah, rape comes up pretty frequently in revenge movies because it's a clear-cut motivation for revenge. It's a crime, a terrible crime, that leaves the victim alive.
I like the line, too. I think I've got this literally right. That Sam tells Mark that when Max was assaulting the girl in Baltimore, he was there when he was doing his job as a lawyer.
By the way, in the book, they were both servicemen. They were in the military, and the censors made them take that out because they didn't want the implication that a military man was as bad as Max Cady.
Okay, right. But the line I believe he uses in talking to Mark is the guy went berserk. So what he was doing was bad enough that Sam thought he had to intervene, and then he went berserk. What exactly did he do? And Marty gets to show what the director in this one, J. Lee Thompson, couldn't show. But then again, he is pretty subtle with that, and he's not allowed to say rape either, but we know what he's talking about. Look at the scene where he chases Nancy through the school. Where is everybody? Why is nobody around? Of course, that one guy isn't actually him.
He's not actually chasing her through the school. He never enters the school.
Oh, that's true. But why is no one around, though? And the mother, too. The mother knows what's going on.
I mean, come on.
Sam, I thought I'd be fine. I went to the store for a few minutes. Why would you think that when you know what's going on already?
Take Nancy with you.
Wait till she comes out of school, then go over to the store. But that is a pretty effective scene, too. And, of course, the commensurate one in the 1991 version is when De Niro and Juliette Lewis, it ends up being a seduction of sorts. He puts his thumb in her mouth, and she's into it.
Is that when they're on the boat?
She's in school. Juliette Lewis is more like 16, 17 years old. This kid's obviously younger than that. But he pretends to be her teacher in the 91 version. And then she realizes that he's not. I think she figures out who it is.
When she sees his knuckle tattoos.
Maybe that's part of it. Yeah, the love-hate thing on his knuckles. Is that in that movie?
That's in the 91 Cape Fear. That's a direct homage to...
Night of the Hunter.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, she realizes who he is, I think. But then she's turned on by him in some way, which also seems to be the case with the wife. To some degree, the way it's played... Nick Nolte and Jessica Lange have sex. He falls asleep, and she's still up. And the movie seems to be suggesting she's thinking, oh, but this other guy, is he turning me on a little bit?
It's the emasculation. In that.
But you don't really see in this. I don't think. That's not really where this one goes. And maybe they couldn't have gone in 62. If they couldn't say rape, then they're probably not going to go to that level either. The comparison scene in this would be Peggy has a restless sleep, but she hears Sam's voiceover about their options. This movie is very smart about that. What are their options? Did they just leave? They have this nice house. He's built a nice life for his family.
He'll follow them. Max has the resources
Max
to
has
follow them.
Reason not to just follow wherever they go. Sam didn't do anything wrong. He did the right thing, and he pays for doing the right thing. And because Max is smart enough not to have crossed the line. You mentioned the lawyer, played by Jack Grushin, who is the doctor in the apartment. So he was nominated for that 2 years earlier, playing the nice, helpful doctor next door.
Oh, yes.
That helps save
the Ubermensch.
Shirley MacLaine's character when she tries to be a mensch.
Yes.
Be a human being. But he's a nice guy in that. In this, he's a slimy lawyer. But Max also knows the law. He studied that in jail. In both versions, they play off this notion that Max knows, I'm not on your property. De Niro says that at one point. I think he's literally on the property line, but hasn't crossed over.
The story itself does a really elegant job of cornering Sam. It's not his fault. He's doing everything right, but no matter what, he just keeps getting tighter and tighter in this spot. The stakes couldn't be higher. The idea that it's not just him, not what would happen to him, but to his wife and his daughter, and she's like 13 years old, and you'll feel his desperation as that vice keeps getting tighter and tighter, and Max's plan is so cruel and efficient, and the way that the film puts you in Sam's shoes is so effective.
Yeah, maybe the families in both versions are tighter when all this is done with and they try to go back to normal, but I'm not so sure about that. So then, in a way, he still won.
He ruined their lives still.
Right. And also the parents talk about not wanting to put Nancy on the witness stand. And this guy raping her would be brutal. Well, he probably would kill her. But even if he didn't actually kill her, they would not want to put her on the stand to testify, to live through all of that. Look what we see in the modern era if you do that. You are called all kinds of things.
And it was probably worse in the 60s, and he's a lawyer. It's funny, it never really dawned on me that in 1962... people were then talking about how the way that they prosecute rape cases re-traumatizes the victims terribly. I thought that was kind of a new realization of the cruelty of the way that the legal system handles rape cases. But apparently they've known for generations what they put victims through when they put rapists on trial. Quite insightful, honestly.
Peggy says on the houseboat when Max corners her that, I'm not like Nancy. I will testify against you. He's saying to her, give me consent, and I won't touch your daughter. But then that means I'm going to rape you, but if you've said it's okay, it isn't going to be rape in the eyes of the law. This guy really studied the law effectively.
Well, he's still going to rape Nancy. Probably. Consent is not going to stop him.
And probably still kill Sam.
It would be even worse for her because she would be like, well, I consented to sex with him and he still raped my daughter. He's that kind of cruel. He would never just throw away his opportunity to do the very worst thing to that family.
And what would Sam do if he found out that actually happened to his daughter? He grabs the gun at one point, and he's about to leave and try to find Max, and she's trying to talk sense to him. Peggy is. She calls Mark, but then he comes back in and realizes, no, I can't just go out there and literally kill somebody, because he would look so guilty, because at this point, Max has done nothing. Look at them on the dock at the marina. Max calls Nancy juicy, and after all that's already happened, even at that point, you don't blame Sam for wanting to hit him. But then to everybody else watching, we think, why did you hit that guy? You guys were just talking and then you slugged somebody? Well, you're the one that's guilty of something here, Mr. Lawyer.
Yeah, and Max is like, oh, how dare you? My stars and garters.
He's a fantastic villain in both versions.
Yeah.
It's one of the great, maybe he should be higher than he is on the villains list, actually, because of how smart he is.
Both villains that are remarkably cruel, but have completely different and equally sinister motivations. Because the villain in Night of the Hunter, he's religiously motivated, he's so narcissistic, he thinks God talks directly to him.
But he wants the money.
He wants the money, yeah, but he can rationalize all of it, and he has this ego that allows him to do whatever he wants, and he has no conscience about it. Max Cady is a pure sadist who truly gets off on other people's suffering.
The cruelty is the point.
The cruelty is the point. He finds this delicious, and you can see this in his performance when he watches Sam lose control. He takes so much pleasure from that. When he survives the beating and he calls him, oh, God, that's a great day for him.
I think that's one reason why at the end Sam is scrambling and crawling for his gun in the swamp, in the mud, because you literalize that phrase of sink to their level.
Yeah.
And understandably, Sam has to get a gun to try to defend himself, but this is the kind of person who would never do that otherwise, sink to somebody's level. And he tried not to for the longest time, but now he literally is to defend himself and his family.
And in the audience, you're like, I would never in a million years want to be left at the mercy of Max Cady, so you're like, get the gun! But the message is there that this man has been reduced to this.
And we talked about not wanting to testify after a rape. Well, that's what happens with Diane. She leaves town instead of testifying against him, and she's a grown woman, unlike Nancy.
And what kind of revenge do you think Max Cady would take out over a woman who testified against him for raping her.
And how do you prove it? Because it was the two of them, and she was with him on a date, and she wanted to be there.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah, no jury
This
would
happens
ever
now.
put
It
him away.
really would have happened long ago, which is, what are you talking about? You went out with the guy in the first place. How could he rape you?
Yeah.
You wanted to be there.
Why were you wearing this slip?
And it appears that they
like,
already had sex first, and then he does all this stuff.
That's the thing. She totally wanted him. Another great insight that rape is about power, not about sex. She would have done anything for him at that point. She was turned on by him. She was fully consenting, but that's not what he wanted. He wanted her to feel small. He wanted her to feel scared. He gets off on that.
Like he did to the ex-wife. When he tells Sam that in the bar scene where Sam offers him $20,000 to leave, it's such a visual description. I don't want to picture what he did to her, but I can.
Yeah.
One of those situations where you're not actually seeing what somebody's saying, but you can really visualize it.
And one of those situations where the censors almost give the filmmakers an opportunity to leave a worse impression in your imagination, because chances are you're going to imagine something worse than what they could show you. So when the censors say, well, you can't use the word rape, and you can't describe or show any of the violence that he's doing, but it just leaves it up to our imagination, and that's pretty bad.
And he ruined that family too, because she remarried and presumably they were happy, and now she's got to go back there, and maybe she doesn't tell the new husband, but then she's probably this haunted, hollow person. And if she does tell him, what does he do?
Yeah, and it's the 60s where if you went home and you said, I was just raped by my ex-husband for a week, even if your husband believed that you were raped, there's a chance that he's the kind of guy that it wouldn't matter. The marriage is ruined anyway.
What about Sam's plan? He's supposed to go to Atlanta, but he'll send Peggy and Nancy to Cape Fear and then be on the river in the houseboat. But then he's going to not be in Atlanta, actually. He's going to hustle up and meet with them. And this is north or south? I looked it up before. Which one? It's one of the Carolinas. But going from Atlanta, which is not a fast drive. It's many, many hours to get there. But I guess that's what he did. Maybe he flew? I don't know. But then Max takes the bait, at least for a while. Max does believe that he's not going to be part of the trip to Cape Fear. I'm going to have my way with these two girls. And Telly Savalas, the Charlie Severs character, the private detective, going out to the boat is part of the whole deal as well, to make him believe that Sam's not here. Do you think they pulled that off? I think they did it pretty well.
Well, they do trick him until the moment when he gets there. And this is where, if they had maintained the story that he was a Marine, I think, was he a Marine? Anyways, that he was in the military, that you might better believe that he would have the kind of training, that he would spot them, that he would have that kind of skill to be that sneaky.
He being Max.
Max, yeah. I guess we're just supposed to believe that Max is really good at this stuff. And
we know he's smart.
He's so careful. He's meticulous. He's smart. I buy it that he would spot them. What is it that he does? The guy sneezes or something, or he drops something and he makes a bit of noise. You're sitting there all night waiting for your mark to show up. Quiet night. It doesn't take that much to draw somebody's attention and give away your spot. They get made, and that's that. And of course, as soon as he sees anybody hiding, he knows that Sam isn't far.
One thing I thought was a typical thriller moment, and I didn't hold it against the movie for this, but it was a bit of a cliche, is that when Sam and Kursick, the guys assigned to help out Sam by Mark, arrive, we don't know it's them. We think it could be Max, and of course Peggy does too. She's got the gun now that we saw earlier that Sam is going to use on Max. You would think that if it was Sam and Kursick, and it is, that they would speak up sooner. Maybe not yell and scream, but just, Peggy, it's us. Rather than make her worry because she's got a gun. She might have accidentally shot one of you. But it's because we're watching a thriller and you have to have a thriller moment. Typical in a 60s movie, there are big gaps where there isn't that much happening that's all that thrilling or scary. Although the movie overall is a hell of a good thriller. Again, talking about the 1991 version, when the houseboat is cut loose, it's a raging storm out there, which is part of why the boat that's why the boat breaks up as much as anything else, I guess, because of the raging storm. But it's unmoored by Max in this version, too. And he gets on, he menaces Peggy, breaks the egg on her, which I guess maybe Polly Bergen didn't know was coming. And also when he bashes her through the doors, he was actually using her to bash through the doors. But I guess she thought, well, this is working for the scene, so I'll take it. But that was all a ruse, because then he's going to just go after Nancy anyway, who's in, I guess, the cabin. We talked about this during the movie, or a cottage. So they have a cottage and a houseboat.
Yeah.
This man makes a lot of money. But Nancy's in the cottage.
Hey. It's in the Carolinas, so...
Different state, though, too, yeah. But Nancy's got the ping pong table and the music and all that stuff in the cottage, but her mother's on the houseboat. You think, again, why is the mother letting Nancy, when they know Max might come?
Well, because that's the lure, right? That they want Nancy hiding in the house
She's not hiding. She's very visible.
No, I know. She's really not doing it very
And she doesn't know how to hide. Sam has to tell her, go hide, when things really go to hell at the end.
Nancy could do herself a few more favors. When she's in the school running away from him, she's also a terrible hider. She's like making a racket and waiting for 10 seconds
Hiding
before
from
she
not
runs
him,
out.
but she thinks it's him. Yeah. Because the other guy's following her.
Do yourself a favor, Nancy. Come on. You could do better.
The guy that they used to follow her actually has a bit of a potbelly. And I forgot this sequence. I haven't seen this movie in quite a long time, but I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times over the years, but it's been a long time. But you had pointed out when they strip search Mitchum earlier, and of course in the remake, De Niro's got all those tattoos, and he's also taut, he's tight, he's in such great shape. In that
Sinewy.
movie. Yeah. Mitchum is not, and he's really sucking in the gut.
Oh, yeah, he is. Well, shoulders out, gut in, and he's trying so hard, and he's supposed to be tough, but he's also supposed to be trim.
And he's not trim, but he's a brawny, scary-looking guy. And that guy following her has not a gut like I do, but he's got a bit of a gut on him. And I thought, well, that must be Mitchum. And I forgot, no, it's just some other dude. So that's actually pretty smart because Mitchum wouldn't want to be portrayed as somebody who's got, what's that word I call it?
Dad bod, love handles?
No, what's the word I'm looking for? The doughy thing, the muffin top.
Oh.
It's not quite a muffin top, but something like that. But he is definitely sucking it in when he's strip searched. And that does track that it could be him because that guy from the waist down looks like it could be Mitchum's character. So Max drowns Kursick very quietly and even says to himself, no fingerprints and all that, and tries to do the same to Sam, who smartly pretends to be drowned, but grabs a rock from underneath and uses it on Max. For anybody who wants to drown somebody, hold on another 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds.
Movies have given us all a false impression of how long it takes to die by suffocation. A good counter to this is Promising Young Woman, a movie that we covered, where Emerald Fennell asked her friend, who was a nurse, how long does it actually take for someone to die by suffocation?
With the pillow.
Or no, her dad's a doctor, maybe. Anyways, she asked a professional, and they were like, 2.5 minutes. So in the film, it takes like 2.5 minutes, the actual real time it takes to suffocate somebody. Whereas movies would imply that you can die by suffocation in under 10 seconds, which is not true. We can all hold our breath for 10 seconds.
Or in this case, drowning, yeah.
Yeah.
So Gregory Peck, Robert Mitchum, and Martin Balsam were in this one, but also in the Scorsese remake. And I love the casting, too, because Mitchum is in that movie quite a bit, and he's a good cop. Well, Peck is...
In the remake, that is.
Yeah, in the remake. And Peck is a sanctimonious lawyer. Villainous, because he's the Crucian character in that. He represents De Niro. I think it's only one scene he has. But Mitchum's, I believe, in quite a bit of the remake as the good guy. I don't know if he's supposed to be the Mark Dutton guy. Maybe he is. None of the names are the same, by the way, except for Sam Bowden and Max Cady. All the other names are changed. The wife, the daughter, the other people in that version. And then Balsam is a judge in that movie, so they cast those 3 guys in the movie that came 29 years later. We've covered Peck 4 times and Mitchum 3 times. With Peck, it's Roman Holiday, which I covered last year on my own. To Kill a Mockingbird made the AFI's Top 100 list. And The Omen. Mitchum was in The Night of the Hunter. We did that last year. And then he's got a small role in Scrooged as Bill Murray's boss. We should have covered more of him over the years. Maybe we'll do more as the years go on. Polly Bergen and also Barry Chase, who plays Diane. For the 60s, very beautiful women. I say that for the 60s thing because people talk about, oh my God, all these beauties, Elizabeth Taylor. But I don't think most of these women from that time ever come close to the babes of today. But Polly Bergen, even with that short hairstyle, which is not my favorite look, is a very pretty lady, and so is Barry Chase. Anyway, Polly Bergen worked for 60-plus years, never hit it big in movies, but did a lot of TV. I think she's pretty damn good in this movie, actually, as the wife, as Peggy. And Laurie Martin plays the daughter Nancy. She was in her 3rd of very few movies in total, but did National Velvet, speaking of Elizabeth Taylor, the TV series. But Martin Balsam has been in a lot of movies we've covered over the years. He's the jury foreman in 12 Angry Men. He's in Psycho, which was 2 years before this. Breakfast at Tiffany's, the year before this. All the President's Men, he's one of the journalists in that. And he's uncredited in On the Waterfront. So we've covered a lot of Balsam over the years. Telly Savalas is not in this movie a whole lot, but, of course, the Kojak guy, that's his most famous thing. He's also in The Dirty Dozen. He's one of the dozen. He's got a small role, a cameo, in the Muppet movie. That's what we covered before with him. And he played Blofeld on Her Majesty's Secret Service, one of the Bond films. Barry Chase, Diane Taylor. She was in a lot of popular musicals, including White Christmas, which we covered many years ago, one of your favorite Christmas movies.
Who's she in that? Just one of the...
I don't know. Let's see. Barry Chase. Let's see if this will go to this.
She was a dancer, so she was probably just one of the dancers.
I'm dreaming of finding this information for Bev to see. Just like the ones I used to see. Where is White Christmas? A lot of movies in 54. She's Doris Lenz, uncredited. She's in Brigadoon that same year. There you go, popular musicals. That is the cast I wrote down. The director, J. Lee Thompson. did The Guns of Navarone with Peck and many others with Peck for that matter, and also 2 of the Planet of the Apes sequels. Alfred Hitchcock apparently helped with the storyboards in this movie, and also his editor and his composer were involved in this. I don't know if that part was intentional, but working with Hitch on the storyboards makes sense because this is a very tense, taut thriller, and who better to ask for advice than Alfred Hitchcock?
Well, initially they asked Hitchcock to direct it. They really wanted him to do this project, and then for whatever reason, he couldn't. So Thompson went out of his way to make a Hitchcockian film, and that's why he chose to shoot black and white. That's why he took advantage of unusual lighting and angles. He copied Hitchcock's practice of suggesting violence instead of showing it.
Yep.
And like you said, he worked with some of his frequent collaborators, his production designer, Robert F. Boyle, his editor, George Tomasini, and of course, Bernard Herrmann. Most famous for his Hitchcock scores, including Psycho and Vertigo.
And this is up there, though, too.
Yeah.
At least the theme. Maybe not the whole score, but that great theme.
It's probably legendary because of The Simpsons, if we're being real.
Mm-hmm. And the remake, too.
Honestly, do you think there is any version of Cape Fear that has actually had a bigger impact than The Simpsons?
Cape Fear with an E at the end of it. Cape Fury. Hello, Bart. Any last requests? Well, there is one. Nah. The writer of this movie was James Webb, who wrote many westerns and B films, also many with Peck, including The Big Country, which was, I believe, in the 50s, I think. And he based it on John MacDonald's 1957 novel, The Executioners. The producer, Cy Bartlett, I believe was a Peck collaborator as well because he worked on Pork Chop Hill, which was a Peck film. He only produced 5 other movies, though. He was mostly a writer. The movie's 185-1. We watched the black and white print. We recorded off Turner Classic Movies, although we own the DVD. Cinematographer Sam Levitt shot The Defiant Ones, which I covered, I think it was last year. And Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which was on the AFI's list. We covered that, obviously. And Anatomy of a Murder, which is on the PVR. Maybe I'll cover it at some point this year when you're on hiatus, I guess, is maybe a movie I can do. It's a long legal thriller. Jimmy Stewart, George C. Scott. Anyway, he did shoot that as well. Tomasini, you mentioned already, the cutter, only cut 23 movies. I didn't realize that. I thought he would have cut a whole lot of them. He was Hitchcock's cutter from Rear Window on. So I think everything that Hitchcock made from that point, certainly the big ones, Rear Window and Psycho and North by Northwest and Vertigo and so on. I think The Birds as well.
Maybe Hitch drove him crazy. Maybe drove him out of the business.
Well, then again, we've told that story before, that with Hitchcock, it was we cut off the top and tail of the shots.
Oh, yeah.
And then put it right in the movie because he didn't shoot extra stuff. He knew exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, good point.
He was fairly easy to cut. And Tomasini also cut Stalag 17, which I covered last summer, I believe it was, on my own. And Bernard Herrmann, one of the great composers of all time, one of the great themes of all time in this movie, also did Taxi Driver and Citizen Kane. And there's many others on his resume. But I've got to say what I always say when I talk about Bernard Herrmann, never once nominated for a Hitchcock score, or this one, for that matter. And he should have been probably many times over. He was nominated lots of times, but never with Hitchcock, not this. Taxi Driver was nominated, maybe should have won. And I think also Obsession he did that year. That's based on his Vertigo score. That was nominated. That didn't win either because The Omen won. So what do you think of the look, the cutting, and the music?
I think this film is really well made. Honestly, a little surprised that it's not held in higher esteem along with some of the other thrillers that we've covered. I'm not sure what I'm missing here, that this isn't on more of the AFI list. I know it's on the Thrills list. Definitely belongs there.
And the villains.
And the villains. But I'm a little surprised this isn't more in the conversation of greatest films. Maybe it's because it's copying Hitchcock, but it's not Hitchcock. Maybe it's because it was a little ahead of its time because it feels pretty dark. And
very lurid, as I said before.
Very lurid, yeah, but then it has to be toothless at the end because the censors forced them. And that was a censor choice, by the way, to not kill him at the end. He has to go back to prison because, we still believe in law and order around here. Mm. I don't think it did great in the box office.
I couldn't find numbers, but I don't think so.
That always hurts a movie when you talk about those AFI lists. They care a little bit, at least, about awards and honors, and
this doesn't really have that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that it's lacking those markers of success might be part of the reason why we don't talk about it with a great... I shouldn't say that we don't talk about it. It is a movie that's in the conversation. There are some movies that could easily be replaced by Cape Fear on the AFI Top 100 list.
You said it when it was over. Because you had never seen this version. I said, what do you think of it? And I loved it.
It kind of blew me away. I was so entertained, but also really got under my skin.
And Marty's version is one of his more underrated films, and one of his more underrated... Well, he's not really a thriller guy, I guess, per se. But it made a lot of money, was very successful, got Oscar nominations for 2 of the actors. And I think a lot of people look at it very fondly, especially compared to some of the stuff that as much as it might have been rewarded in a more recent era, because Marty's always up for Oscars now, and his actors often are. But those movies maybe haven't stayed in the consciousness the way that did. And for Peck, like I said in the trivia, this is a guy that did these movies like To Kill a Mockingbird and these classy movies, or if it was a war film, it was more of a classy war film like 12 O'Clock High. But he does Guns of Navarone, which, as I recall, he's the one that said there's this homosexual subtext in there. David Niven wants him or something like that, and he wants somebody else, and all these people that want the other guy. It's not about at all that these guys are gay. They're doing a war thing for 2.5 hours or so. But then his somewhat joking but somewhat serious thing, Peck's is that this movie's actually got a subtext that all these guys on this mission secretly want each other. And this is the guy that did more classy movies, but here he is getting down in the muck with Mitchum in this movie. And I guess they had some kind of battles on this. Mitchum didn't want to do it at first, but then Thompson and Peck effectively bribed him with bourbon. All right, I'll do it after all. And he made the right choice because he is great in this. He's terrific in Night of the Hunter. Maybe that's more famous and more revered. Well, it is, I think, generally speaking. But it's a great villain here, too.
I like the 62 version better than the 91 version, with one exception, which is that Juliette Lewis earned that Oscar nomination. She really elevates that film with an incredible performance in a way that Nancy in this version is not really doing anything except being a victim. She's playing scared very well. She's an innocent girl. She's doing her job.
But she's a girl, and
yeah, whereas Juliette Lewis
is a teenager.
There's something going on in that performance that totally changes that film. I don't like Nick Nolte in the lead, but just in general, I think this is a better movie.
Harrison Ford, I believe, is who Marty wanted for that. That might have been a more interesting choice.
Agreed.
Although I think Nolte does a good job, and Jessica Lange does a good job. But that movie does belong to De Niro and Juliette Lewis.
But you can't say De Niro did a better job than Robert Mitchum. They're playing it differently.
It's on the same plane.
Yeah. I'm not trying to trash that performance of De Niro's. It is an incredible performance, but it's dirtier, raunchier, just way more in your face, whereas Mitchum is playing it with this charm.
Yeah.
It's that much more sinister to me, but not slagging De Niro's performance at all. That is an incredible performance.
What happens next? Well, maybe Sam can actually prove that Cady attacked his family or that he killed Kursick. So then the SOB goes free. And if so, can Sam trust that Nancy will ever be safe? I guess we said this already, but this has an unending terror conclusion that movies like The Birds do. This is over, but is it? And this one, unlike the remake, the guy's alive. Yeah, they should have just put holes in him.
I mean, come on. That's the whole story, too, that you corrupt upstanding citizen.
Yeah, because in the remake it's, I'm gonna kill you, but can't, so he's impotent in that way. He's not able to do it. But seconds before the guy washed away, this lawyer who, for the most... Well, then again, the other thing, too, is that in the remake, he sells out his client, which is another wrinkle that Marty puts in there, maybe the writers, I guess, but that they put in that version, where he is supposed to represent Max Cady in this rape case.
That's what it is.
And realizes that he did this. I want him to go out for this. He deserves to go out for this. And he sells him out. He
actually wrongs Cady versus Gregory Peck's version, who's protecting a woman and then bearing witness in a court of law. He's not making anything up. Cady doesn't have any actual good reason to hate him, except that it just gives him an easy target to be a victim to his sadism.
Yeah, we haven't talked about remakes as often during a podcast with the original movie, but I think you got to compare the two of them because Marty's has more juice in a lot of ways, and I think it's a pretty good movie, and I probably should watch it again one of these days. I think we've seen it.
We did watch it together a few years ago.
But this does stand on its own. Right then, last thoughts on your last movie for, we don't know how long. Bev will be recovering from surgery. The surgery is 2 days from now. We record this on March 31st. But then we're way ahead, so that's why, what is it? This goes up on the 22nd of April.
Yeah, we've been putting these in the can to make up for
So you might be back sooner than we think, but it'll be May for sure. We don't know when exactly in May you'll be able to watch and record again, because getting better and not having to climb stairs a lot of times to go down and watch movies and whatnot is more important than a podcast. I'll do stuff on my own. But anyway, your last podcast for a while, Cape Fear, finish it up.
Well, rare that any movie, especially a movie from the 60s, has me on the edge of my seat like this. It is just a great thriller, man. I'm hooked.
I've been talking about the 91 version having more juice, and I think it does in a lot of ways. But this is still a terrific thriller on its own merits. It has some fascinating moral quandaries of its own, partly the whole thing behind, you can't blame this guy for wanting to kill somebody, for all the things he said, and all the things we know he's done, but he hasn't really done anything to your family. What would you do if that was you?
I would kill him.
I maybe would want to, too.
Easy to say.
He's also telling this witness against him that he also did a terrible thing, should be in jail for what he did to the ex-wife when he got out of jail.
Yeah. And these days, he would be on a sex offender list. And I think we actually give society carte blanche to turn sex offenders into lifelong pariahs. So he would actually have more of a reason to hate Sam for ruining his life, because that's the kind of thing that never leaves you.
Yeah, he wants him to rot in jail is what he says. And 8 years, though, for what he did to the girl in Baltimore is not that long, really. Although that was the 60s, or maybe even arguably the 50s.
It was
the 50s, right. It was.
They don't go super into the details of what happened, so I'm not sure. And I think he gets out on parole, right? There's some kind of good behavior going on there. They don't expect him to get out of prison as early as he does.
You know, part of what's, again, in the remake, maybe not in this version, I believe De Niro either hints at it or makes it pretty blatantly obvious that what he does to women is what happened to him in jail. He was raped. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but he's the kind of person that would say, oh yeah, this is the way the world is. I get raped when I'm in jail and I'm serving my time and just trying to get out of here. Well, I'm going to make other people pay for it, including the guy who sent me up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't him that sent him up anyway, it was the system, but okay. Very good movie. So that was how we saw Cape Fear, 1962, and also 1991. And as we just said, Bev will be off for a while recovering from her heel surgery. We'll aim for sometime in May. We don't know for sure when. Probably mid, maybe even late. But I won't be elevating my foot and feeling terrible all the next week or months, whatever long, not months, but a month, how long it does last. So on April 29th, I'll be wrapping up Revenge Month. If I didn't say that already, of course, this is still Revenge Month with Cape Fear. And then in a week, the 1989 Batman, which has some serious revenge themes in it. Bruce Wayne wants vengeance on every bad guy in Gotham, even the ones who had nothing to do with his parents' death, while the Joker blames Batman for turning him into a leering clown, and he wants some payback. And since we don't do coming attractions trivia questions for episodes I record on my own, Bev, go ahead and do what you do at the end of our shows.
All right. You already know how to find us, but let me remind you to favorite or subscribe wherever you listen, which is also where you can find our archive of hundreds of episodes that are available for free. While you're there, leave us a rating and a review. That's a great way to support the podcast. You can reach us on Twitter. I'm at Bev Ellis Ellis, and Ryan is at MovieFiend51. You can also reach us by email, haveyoueverseenpodcast@gmail.com. You can find our podcast on YouTube. Our channel is at HYES Ellis. And to enjoy freshly roasted premium coffee delivered straight to you in Canada or the US, please go to sparkplug.coffee/HYES and enjoy a 20% discount.
Very well, Bev. I will send you to heaven before I send you to hell. And a 2 and a 3, you know.
And cut.